Good evening, my friends. It's Wednesday night, and we get to hang out for a few minutes together. Before I get started tonight, make sure you share tonight's teaching. And just want to remind you that this Sunday evening from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock, we are hosting our Family Fall Festival right here on our campus. And we're inviting everyone and anyone to come out and join us. It's going to be an excellent, fun time for the entire family. And then in November, from the 7th through the 14th is our World Missions Week, most important week in our entire church calendar. And we are building churches in Egypt this year. Our goal is to raise $80,000 to build 4 churches in that country. This is a busy, busy time of year, and I hope you're getting connected and getting plugged into what's happening here at New Life. Tonight we're going to get back into James chapter 3, where James is talking about wisdom, the importance of having wisdom in our life, the importance of allowing our life to be governed by wisdom. But James draws a stark difference between two different kinds of wisdom. Wisdom from above, godly wisdom, wisdom from below, earthly wisdom. So tonight I want to look first of all at wisdom from above. In the 17th verse of chapter 3, here's what he said. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It's also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy and the fruits of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. So James is describing wisdom from above, godly wisdom. Paul has something to say about it in Colossians 2, and this is so important because this, I think, gives us the foundation of wisdom. In chapter 2 of Colossians, verse number 2 and 3, I want them to be encouraged and knit together by strong ties of love. This is Paul's desire for believers. I want them to have complete confidence that they understand God's mysterious plan, which is in Christ Himself. In Him, that is in Jesus Christ, lie hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Last week we talked about wisdom. We said that it begins with knowledge, then it progresses to understanding, and then eventually it's wisdom, which is the proper, accurate application of what we know and what we understand. Paul tells us here that godly wisdom begins with a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. We can never experience the wisdom of God. We can never operate our life according to the wisdom of God if we don't first have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. In Him comes wisdom. And James told us in chapter 1 that wisdom is available to anyone that needs it. If you want wisdom, you desire wisdom, James encourages us to ask for wisdom. So that is the wisdom from above. Now, let's compare wisdom from above and wisdom from below. Let's look at the characteristics that James gives to us. Back to chapter 3, and I'm going to pick it up in the 14th verse. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and even demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure, peace-loving, gentle at all times, willing to yield to others, full of mercy, and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. So James is drawing a comparison between two different kinds of wisdom. So first of all, the wisdom from below. He tells us here that it's full of bitter jealousy. If we're living by the wisdom of this world, if we're living by earthly wisdom, we are motivated by bitter jealousy. Not just jealousy, but bitter jealousy, resentful. It is deep and it's controlling our life. He says it's full of selfish ambition. When we're living by the wisdom from below, the wisdom of this world, then we promote ourselves rather than promoting God. We promote ourselves, and that's not godly wisdom. And then he says it's full of arrogance. In other words, wisdom from below is prideful. Not only do we promote ourselves, but then we exalt ourselves. And then last of all, he talks about deceit. It covers up the truth. Many times when we're living by the wisdom of this world, and we see it all through our society, people that are not operating in godly wisdom, not following godly principles, they have a tendency to cover up the truth. They have a tendency to be deceitful, which leads to lying and so many other negative things. In fact, James tells us that that wisdom is earthly, unspiritual, and even demonic. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to operate my life according to that wisdom. So James gives us the characteristics of the wisdom of the world. And I don't know about you, but it sounds like society today. I think about how arrogant people are today. I think about how deceitful people are today. It sounds like modern politics. And James tells us that eventually the result is disorder and confusion. I don't know. This world is so crazy today, so chaotic today, so divisive today, so disorderly today. And I'm going to just go on a line and say it's because so many people that are running the show are not operating with godly wisdom. They're operating with earthly wisdom, full of pride, jealousy, and arrogance. All right? Now he talks about the characteristics of wisdom from above. And I'm just going to read through what he says right here in these verses. First of all, he says wisdom from above, godly wisdom, is pure. There is an inner quality about godly wisdom. And that's because it's not contaminated by jealousy. It's not contaminated by pride. It's not polluted or contaminated by deceit. It is pure. He said, godly wisdom is peace-loving. It promotes peace, not strife. We need some peace in our world today. And if we're living by godly wisdom, then I think we're going to promote more peace than we are divisiveness. I'm not saying we're not going to disagree on things, but there's a difference between disagreeing and just utter chaos and strife. In fact, Paul told us in Romans chapter 12, do all you can to be at peace with all people. So I have a responsibility as a believer, if I'm living according to godly wisdom, if I have genuine faith, which I think is replicated by godly wisdom, that I need to do what I can to be at peace with people. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, and it doesn't mean that everybody wants to be at peace with me. But godly wisdom is not running around destroying things or destroying people or causing division or strife. It's peace-loving. He also says it's gentle. Gentle means moderation without weakness. We can be gentle and not be weak. Here's what Carl Sandburg said about Abraham Lincoln. He said he's a man of velvet steel. I like that. A man of velvet steel. In other words, he's got a soft heart, he's compassionate, he's caring, but he's tough, he's strong. And when I think about Jesus, I think that Jesus was a man of velvet steel. He was compassionate and sensitive and long-suffering, but he was a strong man. He was a man's man. So when we are living by the wisdom of God and we are operating in authentic, genuine faith, I think there's going to be a gentleness to our life. Not a harshness, but a gentleness. And then James tells us here that it's reasonable, willing to listen to other people. You know, the scripture talks about let us come together and reason together. How much better would our world be? How much better would our families be? How much better would our businesses be? How much better would our churches be if people would be more reasonable? If people would be willing to listen to other people. Again, it doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything you say or believe or vice versa. But we can at least listen. And the way that we grow and the way that we learn a little bit more about life is we're willing to listen to others. So wisdom is more reasonable. Then he says it's full of mercy. Mercy is having a concern for other people. Mercy is withholding judgment or punishment. God gives us grace and mercy. And God's mercy is that God doesn't punish us for things that we should be punished for. And I think that if we're believers and we're operating and living by the wisdom of God, I think we're going to have a little bit more mercy in our heart than we're going to have judgment and condemnation. Okay? Doesn't mean we ignore wrong, but we need to be more merciful to other people. And then he says it's full of good fruits. Walking in God's wisdom produces good fruit, good results. It's productive, not destructive. Okay? And walking in the wisdom of God is looking for practical ways to help people, to bless people, to encourage people, to direct people. That's what the wisdom of God is all about. And that's what James is doing here. He's drawing an analogy. Worldly wisdom, divisive, arrogant, prideful. Wisdom of God, productive, peace-loving, gentle, reasonable. And then last of all, he says it shows no favoritism. In other words, it treats everybody with respect. And we know that James brought out an example earlier about if someone came into church and because they had money and looked wealthy, they were treated differently than someone that came in that looked poor and didn't have a lot of monetary value or a lot of monetary assets. And James said there's no place for that. So godly wisdom doesn't show favoritism. It shows respect to each and every person. You know, I have a little saying that I remind myself of quite a bit, and that is that origin determines outcome. Origin determines outcome. And the origin of our wisdom determines the outcome of our wisdom. If we have worldly wisdom, we know what it's going to produce. James tells us. If we have godly wisdom, we know what it's going to produce. And again, chapter 1, he tells us if you lack wisdom, ask God. I need wisdom in my life. We need wisdom in our life. There's no excuse for followers of Christ to not live by and operate by godly wisdom. And authentic faith produces godly wisdom. And again, we could stop so much of the chaos and the division and the strife and the infighting and all the stuff that's going on in our world today if people would just look to God and ask Him for some wisdom on how to make decisions, how to treat other people, how to solve problems. Well, I think that's a pretty good word for us today. Let's take it, let's apply it in our life this week, and let's see what happens. Catch you next time.